Hi, this is Linda
And Aaron.
with Traveling Flamingo, and it has been a very busy news week for cruising, so we're going to bring some of these stories to you. There are three specifically we're going to go over. Carnival's further suspension, as well as the U.S. House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, the letter that they received from them. Princess Cruises has also made an announcement, and what was happening with NCL. So all of that and more coming right up.
So as we all remember, there was a no sail order that was issued for cruise lines. And before that, cruise lines had self-decided to stop cruising. And this order was submitted from the CDC, or the Center of Disease Control, from the United States, and that two passenger ships with 250 passengers would be suspended for 100 days or until the COVID-19 situation was no longer a public health emergency. And that would bring 100 days to July, but the CDC can extend that order as required.
So in terms of Carnival, initially they had only had a suspension until June 27th, and we had a cruise June 28th. So we were,
Operative word there was had.
Right. So yes, so this week we did get an email saying that our cruise has been canceled, and on May 4th they announced that they are extending the suspensions even farther, and our cruise, it had said they're extending till August 1st. They won't be starting their Caribbean cruising. So we heard that, we thought, okay, let's go find out some more what's happening with Carnival, and we went to their website and we were really surprised at the extent of the cancellations that they've now gone to, considering they were being really, I would say, hopeful to be cruising June 27th to now being very, very firm, saying, yeah, we'll see what happens with cruising this summer. So all cruising from San Francisco is canceled through the year of 2020. All Carnival Sunrise are canceled until October 19th. Carnival Legend is canceled through October 30th. All Carnival Radiant sailings are canceled through to November 1st. Big deal, all Carnival Spirit Alaska, Hawaii, and Trans-Pacific sailings are canceled through and including August 6th. And then there's a bunch of ships that won't be sailing until through August 31st. So that's the Carnival Breeze, Carnival Dream, Carnival Elation, Carnival Freedom, Horizon, Magic, Sensation, and Vista. And all other ships with sailings are canceled. All other ships are canceled, including through to August 31st. So, if you did have a cruise booked this summer, if you had a cruise especially booked before August 1st, you probably have an email. Check your spam if you haven't got it, because, they have now extended that suspension. The Carnival has stated that we are committed to supporting all public health efforts to manage the COVID-19 situation, and that they are taking a measured approach, focusing on the return to service on a select number of home ports where more significant operations can be easily accessible by car for the majority of their guests. So, they're aware that flying is still a situation, so trying to figure out maybe how they're going to test some cruises once things do start to open up.
One nice thing that we talked about earlier about the canceled ships, we did actually get a call today from Carnival, and they reached out to just say, this is canceled, and just to actually give us their email address, and if we had any questions or needed to rebook, we didn't have to actually call the 1-800 number or do anything online. We could actually email this representative from Carnival, and they would take care of it, which was actually kind of nice as a reach out. We had it with Disney as well, and that Disney cruise was canceled. We talked about that before. Not to say that Disney should have reached out, but they didn't do that. So interesting that Carnival did, and we had a nice phone call from Miami from somebody who wanted to chat and let us know that they're here for us, which was nice.
Yeah, it is good to know if you did have any questions around rebooking or what was happening, that they had proactively reached out to you.
Yeah. So in other news, the U.S. House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure sent a somewhat scathing letter to Carnival about their cruise practices. And so they had said, and we'll show you the letter here, we would hope that the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic will place a renewed emphasis on public health and passenger safety. But frankly, that has not been seen up to this point. It seems as though Carnival Corporation and its portfolio of 9 cruise lines, which represents 109 cruise ships, is still trying to sell this cruise line fantasy and ignoring public health threat. which is an interesting way to kick off a letter. And so, you know, it kind of goes on here to talk about, as of April 23rd, 2020, none of the front-facing websites for any of Carnival's 9 affiliated cruise lines mentioned a single word about COVID-19, coronavirus, or the precautions these cruise lines intend to take once the CDC lifts its no-sail order for cruise lines. Instead, these sites are advertising various images of couples dining and dancing, musicians entertaining, and lines of children holding hands and playing, which again is another interesting line. You know, I think I did see quite a bit of coronavirus stuff. You can see from the videos that we've had on previous videos, you know, that they do have sort of the calamity bar at the top that talks about what they're doing in reaction to Carnival, in reaction to COVID. You know, do they still have the dream of sailing there? Sure, but you know, most places will.
Yeah, they're definitely, I found that even myself going and checking, it is not the biggest, brightest thing on the page, but it is on the front page where you can access their most recent press releases and everything that's been going on with them. And, you know, I think as this develops, yeah, people are going to want to know how they're going to be safe on the ships. And I do think they are going to have to be more upfront with that information as well. They have requested, the committee has requested that by May 15th, Carnival provides information about the potential infections, possible exposure, the health implications, as well as their plan for the health and safety of passengers and crew. I am really interested to see that and start seeing this. I know some people were hoping we'd be on the cruise ship, which, you know, we were, but to see what they're actually putting in place. And then, you know, as Aaron said, it was pretty harsh. Like some of the language, if you know, we'll put the link to the letter below. Yeah, they did not hold back. So, you know, Carnival, I think responded to that, which is why we have seen a bit more drastic response from them as well.
Yeah, it's interesting just sort of the approach that they're taking here. Not to say it's right or wrong. I mean, clearly there's a perception in media and, you know, amongst people of sort of the sanitary conditions of cruise ships. I think a lot of us have been on them and don't necessarily always feel that way. But, you know, they could definitely do better, and every industry is going to have to do better here when it comes to airlines and everything else as well.
I do have to say I have felt a difference. Princess, every single time we wanted to go into the buffet, there was one year we were on the same floor as the buffet. So if we took the wrong elevators up, we had to walk through the buffet to go to our room. And every single time we had to wash our hands. My hands were so dry at the end of that trip. And you'd think you'd figure out what elevators to take, but sometimes you just took the elevator, okay? And every single time, where NCL, the last ship we were on, the hand washing was in the middle. So you would come in on the sides, they had hand sanitizer and there was somebody there most of the time to spray, and then it was up to you to go to the middle and wash your hands, and there were a lot of people who were not. So I did feel already the way Princess's floor plan was set up, and there was 90% of the time an employee there to direct you to wash your hands. So I think the cruise lines may even have to look at how they lay out that floor plan, or what happens with buffets in general.
Yeah, no, another thing that they had cited in this letter was the fact that a fair number of states could trace back some of their COVID patients to cruises. I think it was like 12 or so patients, but the airlines, it's something like 39 different states could trace them back. So, you know, I think that there's a little bit of public perception here that it's kind of easier to go after cruise lines, and you can sort of market that. Plus they had the whole tax thing in the United States where they weren't part of the bailout package because they didn't pay tax domestically, which, you know, we don't need to get into that specifically, but I think there is a bit of a perception, and I think it's kind of easy to play on that perception in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think there's a perception of sanitary and catching illnesses, but I think another big thing that we've also seen in comments on some of our previous videos is the fear of being quarantined on the ship. So it's not just getting sick, but this, you know, in this pandemic, you know, some of those situations for being quarantined. So there is quite a lot that they're going to have to look at to ease some people's feelings to get back to cruising.
So let us know your comments or your thoughts in the comments below, but we'll move on to the Princess Cruise announcement.
Princess Cruise has announced, or on Thursday they announced, that they will be suspending global operations for the rest of the summer of 2020, which is a huge deal. So they've sort of leaned towards, when you go to their site, again, it's a result of limited flights and port closure, but regardless, it's closed. So specifically, all remaining cruises to Alaska on the Emerald Princess and Ruby Princess, all remaining Europe transatlantic cruises on the Enchanted Princess, Regal, Sky, Crown, and Island Princess, the summer Caribbean cruises and all Canadian and New England cruises on the Caribbean Princess and Sky Princess, as well as summer to fall cruises that would be departing from Japan on the Diamond Princess have been suspended. The Australia-based cruises on the Sapphire Princess, the Sea Princess through August have been suspended. July cruises sailing from Taiwan on Majestic Princess, as well as fall cruises sailing to Hawaii and French Polynesia on the Pacific Princess through November have been suspended. So they have, as well, you know, very aggressively just now said flat out, we're going to be suspending for quite a while. And I mean, it's going to be huge for some of these areas that really depend on the tourist industry for the summer months.
It's going to be interesting too, because I think a lot of the local brands are going to open up for some of the Carnival cruise, the 9 brands under Carnival. I think some of the local ones like P&O and so forth will probably open up first before some of the more international brands like Princess, just because there's probably more regional familiarity with those brands. So you can see that they're kind of prioritizing some of the, I think, more regional brands than some of these global brands. And you'll probably see something different from like Royal Caribbean or from sort of the brands that don't really have as many regional specific brands. So it's going to be interesting to see how all these different cruise lines handle this. But it's a big amount of cancellations for Princess and you know, that revenue for Carnival.
So also, if you're on your Princess cruise, if you had one of those booked for the summer, make sure you're checking your email or checking their website. Most of the cruise lines do also have a set date that you have to decide if you would like the cruise credit or your money back. So make sure you don't procrastinate too long on doing that, especially if you want your money back, because we wouldn't want anybody to miss out on that. So make sure you do check in.
They will generally just default after a certain amount of time to a cruise credit, but if you want the money back, you know, there could be time limits on that, so do be aware. And there is also processing time and stuff, so don't expect to just get the money back the next day. It's probably going to take a couple of weeks. And our last little bit of news for today is about NCL. So NCL at the beginning of the week came out and said that they didn't have any money and they were bankrupt, or they were going to be bankrupt at the current rate that they were going, and that they needed to raise $2 billion of funding to survive this pandemic. Luckily, I think it was about the next day or so, they had announced...
The next day.
Yeah, it was the next day. They had announced that they did find $2 billion. You know, sort of makes it sound like they looked under the couch or something, but they did raise $2 billion, so they're able to continue moving on. However, this is the first cruise line that has sort of publicly stated that they were potentially facing bankruptcy if they didn't raise more money. But good to know that the capital is out there for them to raise $2 billion. So I guess there's some market confidence in cruise lines, because, you know, you wouldn't be raising $2 billion off the streets if people weren't, you know, at least slightly confident in the cruise industry.
Well, and that $2 billion will actually allow them to go for 12 months without revenue. So I think a lot of us are hoping we don't have to go 12 months without getting an opportunity to cruise again. But depending on what's happening with the pandemic, they are now able to survive as a company for 12 months. And as Aaron said, you know, hearing that from one of the bigger cruise lines really does make you think about what will be out there when all this is done.
So that's the general news for at least this week. So it is May 8th today. So, you know, that's the week that we have. We hope that everybody has a great Mother's Day coming up.
In Canada,
yeah. We did cancel, as we said, our Carnival cruise was canceled. We still do have a July cruise that may or may not be going at this point.
Royal Caribbean has not suspended into July.
So we'll see if that happens.
We have a Disney cruise in August. Now we rebooked the one from March break for then, so being a bit optimistic, but
we're hoping one of them work.
Yeah, hoping to get a little vacation in there and also get some content and everything for you guys, because we know people are interested to see what this whole process will look like. And I was even thinking about it this morning. They're really going to have to look right through boarding, and I mean, we've been waiting in extremely packed rooms to get onto the ship, so what's that going to look like to try and keep, if they are trying to keep social distancing?
You're going to start seeing parts of it. I think the Asian markets are probably going to open up earlier than the rest of, you can see it. Apple's opening up some of their stores in Asia. They're also opening up some stores in other parts of Europe, so you can start to see that they're starting to test some of these processes, and I think you're probably going to start seeing that with the cruise lines. At least regional brands will probably be opening up for the same thing, and You know, is it going to be temperature monitoring? Is it going to be social distancing? How are you going to do social distancing? So
yeah, the buffets.
Yeah.
Just think about how you're going to do it in those busy buffets. So again, thank you so much for watching. We really do hope that you enjoyed or appreciated our news update. And we appreciate all of our traveling Flamingo family who've been commenting and liking and keeping us in the loop with all their experiences so far. So thanks so much for watching and happy travels.